So, Father Simon invited me to speak to you again. How many people were not here last time? Oh, very few. Okay. I wanted to first thank you all for coming, and this is amazing to have so many high school students committed to come and get closer to the Lord and to be holy, because you remember that the Lord Jesus said, "Be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect." What does that mean? That means we are all called to be saints. We're all called to be saints, and it's being a saint is our will to be in perfect alignment with the will of God, right? When that is what will give us true happiness, true joy, leading up to eternity in heaven. And heaven starts on earth with the Mass and with being with each other. And when we give each other pure love, true love, when we really care about each other, self-giving love. So I'm here today to tell you my personal story. I'm a deacon. I'm 55 years old. My son is a priest. I have 2 daughters who are married. And I raised my children in the church. I've always worked very hard. And I wanted to, by this time, at age 55, to retire, donate all the money I would have made to the church in church projects, and just work in the church, work with the youth, work in the church. But something happened to me last year that I had no idea all my life it would happen to me. Between February 2017 to almost the end of June, after Father's Day. Last Father's Day, June, I don't remember the date. It was the worst Father's Day for me. So between that period, the beginning of February to the end of June of last year, I was stricken with severe clinical depression. It happened because I had big plans for my business. I wanted to be the next Microsoft, the next Amazon. I had a technology business. And the plans did not go as I wanted them to go. I invested a lot in a big division in my business, and I really wanted to be famous like Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, the guy who's been on the news lately. And then I thought, I'm going to be famous in business, and then everybody's going to know that I am a deacon, a devout Catholic, and this is how they're going to follow Jesus. Because I'm going to donate all my money to the church. That was my plan. But that wasn't God's plan. So I reached a point where I could not sustain my business anymore. So I had to look for a company to either buy my business or merge. I approached an amazing company, a blessed company, big nationwide, worldwide, public company. And they couldn't, because they are a public company, they have certain standards. They couldn't acquire us, they couldn't buy us, but then we agreed to merge. So my team came, merged with them, and I began the process of closing down my company. Now I have a new position with a new company. And the guilt of all the mistakes I made running my company, and the fear of what could happen, because I had a lot of obligations. I thought I was going to go bankrupt, get sued, go to jail. Started thinking of the worst possible cases that could happen. So regret of past mistakes just thinking about past mistakes. I was caught in that vicious cycle. I couldn't sleep. In the first few weeks, I could not sleep all night. And I had to work. I had a job. I had to work and support my family and have health insurance. I was scared to death. And then I was afraid of being sued by people and being creditors coming after me, people coming after me. And I fell into severe clinical depression. It was such a dark time that nobody can describe, tell you what it is, even psychiatrists, even psychologists, unless someone goes through it. The pain and the darkness was so scary that now when I think of it, when I even walk around my house in certain areas where it was the worst possible time of oppression, I was being oppressed by evil spirits. It brings fear to my heart till this day. Even now, leaving the house, certain instances. But I'm here to tell you what I went through and how I was able to beat the devil, and now how I am surviving now, and what are the tools and the weapons I am using. And the reason I am going public with my story is because I don't want it to happen to anybody else. And if it happens, then I want to be there to help other people. Because when I went through it, even my family did not know how to handle it. I was so scared one day when I got on one of the social media and I saw someone says, so-and-so lost their battle with depression. And you know what that means, right? Yes. Taking their life away. And you know that happens all the time. It happened to even some famous actors, and a lot of, you've heard, even happens in our community. So I want to describe to you the state that I was in during those 5 months. I was in such a bad state that my kids and my family didn't know how to handle it. So they saw me in a certain state. I was different. One day my daughter told me, "Dad, I've never seen something like this. Never seen it." They went and looked it up. And they came one day, Father Simon and my 2 daughters, and they said, "Dad, we need to talk to you. We're going to read to you these things and tell us if you are going through these things." And they read to me a list of things, and I said, yes. They said, "Dad, you have clinical depression. And you need to go see somebody." And I didn't want to, because it was situational for me. It was because of a change in my business that happened. So here is how I was. I was trapped in mistakes of the past, regrets and guilt. Just feeling guilty about everything, every mistake I made in business. Even though we had a good company, I made it to Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year. I was a semi-finalist several times. I had teams of people. We had awards and stuff. But I had made business mistakes. Whenever you're in business and you want to grow, I made mistakes. So I kept thinking about these mistakes. And why did I hire this person? And why did I do this? And it kept that. And then the brain takes you into mistakes of the past, kept going back and back and back until childhood. And I stayed in that, in that vicious cycle. And the devil took that advantage and attacked me and wanted to destroy me. This is what the devil wants, is to destroy us. It's a proof that, to me, it was a proof that the devil exists and how I was oppressed by evil spirits. And then the way I was healed was a proof to me that God exists. And that I went through this because he wanted to detach me from material possessions and the love of material possessions and bring me closer to his heart so I can help other people. My mind would play all the time details of my life from the past since childhood. I would always imagine horrifying scenarios of what I thought was going to happen to me and to my family. I thought I was going to be so embarrassed that it was going to be embarrassing for my son, and I was going to embarrass him, and that was what was scaring me the most, is that I was going to embarrass my son. And that the devil wanted that. The devil wanted to destroy me, to destroy him, to take us both out of the ministry so that he can stop helping people like you and other people. The devil is after the priest. He does not want priesthood. He does not want the Mass. He does not want the Eucharist, because this is how God comes to us in person in the Eucharist. Without the priest, there is no Eucharist. So the devil wanted to destroy me and destroy my son and destroy my family. So I was oppressed, and I came very close to total destruction. I was really, really close. Doctors switched me on 7 different medications in 5 months. Now I have to say that I'm not a doctor, and I'm here just to tell you about my personal experience. I'm not saying doctors don't know what they're doing or whatever, because there is a field of psychology and psychiatry. These are a lot of science involved, science of the brain, but always in the treatment of these situations, there has to be both science and faith, both a physical, medical aspect and a spiritual aspect. And a lot of times, people who don't have a relationship with God try to treat it only with medication. And this is why a lot of times, I don't know what the percentage is of people with depression end up taking out their lives. It happens a lot, because apparently, no matter what medication and treatment they're going, apparently it's not working. So there is always a spiritual aspect to it. And I will tell you in a minute how God saved me. On certain days, imagine you wake up in the morning. I never looked forward to sleeping or to waking up. I would go to bed every night for about 5 months, wishing and praying I don't wake up the next day. I didn't want to, if I was not a believer, I would have most probably taken out my life. But I knew it's mortal sin. And Father Simon kept reminding me, Dad, your soul is at stake. Dad, imagine what eternity in hell means. And this is what was scaring me. This is what kept me alive. I would pace around in the living room, back and forth on certain days for 14 hours. Imagine, when I describe it to people, hard to believe. Now that I think about it, is how did I get trapped into this? You know how the devil always tries to oppress us and destroy us, all of us, and to lock us up into slavery to sin, whether it's sexual sin or pornography or bad music or thinking of mistakes of the past that you might have made and want you to think that you are worthless and no matter what. But we have to always remind the devil that he is a loser and that Jesus paid for the price of my sins. But I even lost my faith. I remember one time I told one of the priests, and I said, tell me something that proves God's existence. Tell me right now. I need to know right now. Even though I knew. And all my life, I spent telling people about Jesus. And I knew all the miracles. And I knew all the stories of the saints. And during that time, we thought we were going to lose our house. So we put up our house for sale. And the real estate agent said, you know, we have religious pictures all over the house. He said, to increase the chances of selling the house, you should take down all the religious pictures. Because somebody comes here and think you're weird and they don't want to buy the house. I said, okay. We took down all the pictures. Foolish of me. If I do it again, I would never do that again. But one picture stayed. And me and my wife, still till this day, we don't know how that picture stayed up. We took down even the pictures of the Blessed Mother and Jesus. We had a picture of the Divine Mercy, beautiful picture. Now my wife just brought it, just 2 days ago, brought it back. We're going to hang it in our bedroom, of Jesus, the rays coming out of him, Divine Mercy. Jesus, I trust in you. But there was one picture that never came down. And it was a picture of one of my favorite saints, Saint Padre Pio. Years ago, when I was close to your age, I read his story. I read the story of his life. He was an Italian priest who lived in the 20th century. And he had the wounds of Christ. He lived from the wounds of Christ for 50 years on his hands and his feet and his side. Blood would always come out. They couldn't explain it. Doctors couldn't explain it. And when he died in 1968, the wounds disappeared. Right away. As soon as he died, wounds disappeared. His body is still not corrupted. You can look him up. Padre Pio. P-A-D-R-E, Padre for Father. Pio, P-I-O. And he used to pray the rosary all day. All day. The rosary never left his hand. He would go to sleep with the rosary in his hand, and he would stop when he went to sleep at a certain point. He would wake up and then continue exactly where he was. He would pray like 30 rosary a day while working in the monastery, while seeing people. He used to hear confessions like 12 hours a day. People used to come to him from all over the world. He has thousands and thousands of spiritual children. He used to bilocate. They used to see him in Italy and different parts of Italy, and in San Giovanni Rotondo in South Italy, where he's from, and in Rome at the same time. People would go to him for confession, and they tell him, tell me your sins. They would tell him sins. Are you done? Yes. No, you're not done. You have this sin, this sin, this sin that you did not confess. He knew what the sins were. But the biggest thing about Padre Pio was the devil used to physically appear to him at night. Physically, and fight with him. He used to live in a room, a monk's room. They used to hear noises like a train coming at night, the monks around him. They used to go and see him on the floor, tired and like somebody who just had a big fight. The devil would physically appear to him to destroy him because he was so holy. We still don't know till this day. We cannot explain how did we not bring his picture down. And his picture is right next to me when I sleep. But for 5 months, I did not pray the rosary. I did not even enjoy the Mass. I stopped coming to Mass on Sunday. My friends knew that for 5 months I disappeared. One of our bishops kept telling Father Simon, I want to go see your dad. He would tell me, Dad, the bishop wants to come and see you. I said, no, I don't want to see the bishop. Imagine, the bishop wants to visit me and I refused the visit of the bishop. I didn't want to see my friends. I stopped playing with my grandchildren, and I'm like, they're my life. I did not pray with them for 5 months. One day my grandson came home, and all I said was, Luke, did you have fun over Aiden's house? And he said, Mommy, Baba is talking again. They thought I had gone mute completely because I wasn't talking. So I was truly, truly oppressed for 5 months. While I was still working, I would work, but it was torture. Do you know what the most torturing thing was for me during those 5 months? It's taking a shower. It's like when the water came, it was like knives. I couldn't even take a shower. I couldn't sleep. The biggest problem I had was constipation. I couldn't even go to the bathroom anymore. So I stopped eating because I was afraid it's not going to come out. And I lost 50 pounds in 2 months. People would see me and say, what's wrong with Ghaif? All this time, and my son and my wife are struggling, and they keep saying, crying every day, we want our dad back. I was like a different person. I would come only on Saturday to Mass, just because I knew it was mortal sin not to come to Mass. So I came, but I didn't feel it. I would be on the altar and I don't want to be there. I couldn't sit. I couldn't sit still. I was being tortured. You know, it's called spiritual warfare because we have a soul and a body. Our soul is, God puts our soul at the moment of our conception in our mother's womb. And the soul is a spiritual being, right? That's with the body, and the soul goes up to heaven after death. So the devil attacks the soul, wants our soul to be weak and eventually to destroy us so we can be separated from God. So we're always being oppressed by evil spirits to a certain degree. All of us. Whether it's in each to a different degree, different way. I think I was oppressed because I started years ago the Pure Love Club and the Chastity Apostolate. A friend of mine told me, if you're going to do this, you need a prayer group just for you. I said, why? He said, because you're in the front lines. I said, what do you mean front lines? He goes, this is war. You're in the front lines. The devil wants these guys, these people, the young people. And you're trying to save them? Whoa! You're really hitting the devil. You're in the front lines. It's like war. There is back people in the back. There is doctors. There are suppliers who bring food. There are soldiers in the middle. But there are soldiers in the front who take most of the bullets. Most of those guys don't come back alive. He said, you're in the front lines. And sure enough, since I started the Pure Love Club, I've been getting hits one after the other. And then my only son becomes a priest and he's helping young people. And my daughters lived a life of chastity, did not have a boyfriend, and walked. Their first kiss was after the priest said, you may kiss the bride. This must have driven the devil crazy. I'm not bragging about it, but this is how I strive to live my life. So I believe I was oppressed. So spiritual warfare is happening to every one of us. But our weapon is the rosary. Our weapon is the rosary. And I'll tell you how God saved me through the rosary. He wanted to detach me and bring me closer to his heart. So what happened in the spiritual warfare for those 5 months, imagine a war. I was injured on the battlefield. I was captured by the enemy, the devil. Just like now, any war, there is people that fall in enemy hands, right? POW, prisoner of war. I was injured. I fell in enemy hands. And I was put in a prison cell and I was tortured for 5 months. But I escaped because I knew that someone had paid for the price of my freedom. And that's the blood of Jesus on the cross. He paid for the price of our freedom. Freedom of all of us. We are all, to a certain extent, slaves to sin. True freedom is to be free from slavery to sin. So if you are addicted to laziness or alcohol or drugs or pornography or sin, even sexual sin, you think you cannot get out of it, you should know that God is waiting for you. But it has to be your decision, and it has to be transforming your mind, like in Romans chapter 12, verse 2, through meditating on the mysteries of the rosary. The Lord gave us the rosary as a weapon. So, I had to escape. I was held a prisoner, and this was my weapon to escape. I reached rock bottom on Father's Day. The next day, I was scheduled to go because nothing was working. And my family checked, and they said, the next step is electric shocks to the brain. So I was scheduled to go get electric shock the day after Father's Day, which was the worst day of my life. And my family wanted me healed, and it was like, they thought it was like, because we don't know what this is. We didn't know what it is. And they thought it was like a flu. I take a pill and I'm going to heal in 10 days. And it just wasn't going away. I go to the doctor again. Oh, let's try this pill. Let's try this pill. Let's try this. Let's up the dosage. Now let's give you this one too. And I just became an experiment. And I even hurt my health. I stopped taking my heart medication. When one is in this state, I stopped taking my heart medication. I stopped taking my cholesterol medication. I wasn't taking a shower that much. I didn't want to get out. Didn't want to see people. The phone rings, I jolt. I was living basically very close to the animal state. You know how the last time we said the story, I read to you the story of the prodigal son who left his father's house and wasted all the money. He told his father, give me half my inheritance. Now, I don't want to wait till you die. Basically, he told his dad, you're dead to me, and took the inheritance and went wasted it away, and then ended up in a pig farm, eating from what the pigs eat. I was that guy. I ended up in the pig farm. And I'm afraid anyone who is slave to sin, who loses hope in the blood of Christ that He paid for us, and in the joy, because what depression is loss of hope, thinking I'm not worth it, thinking because I made a mistake, and now I cannot go on, I deserve to die, because I'm not good enough. And this is what happens. And that's what the devil wants. Where we're supposed to rejoice in the Lord always, because the Lord rose from the dead, and the resurrection, which we just celebrated, Easter, is the reason for our hope. So, that day, the day after Father's Day, I went in, and Father Simon was with me, my daughter, and my mom. No, not my mom, my wife. My mom didn't know. We didn't even tell her about all of this, because she probably wouldn't have survived it. Anyway, so I went in, I was in the worst possible state. I just was not alive. Alive, but not alive. Many people told me, Raif, you've turned like a zombie. Even people at work. I would do my work because I had to. I had to work, but I was being tortured. So I knew that if I was going to walk and take electric shocks, it was going to fry my brain, do something to me, and that's it. That was the end. I was done. I really was done. The day after Father's Day, I was basically done. So I go in, I sit down, and the person who was signing me in, the doctor came in and waiting for me to shock my brain. He said, have you had breakfast? I said, yeah, I had breakfast. Oh, really? Oh, you cannot do it today. That was a Monday. My wife forgot to tell me. I was not in control that much, so my wife had to schedule. She forgot to tell me the night before that I'm not supposed to have breakfast. And that night, I felt the presence of evil spirits all over my house. I was even walking to my bedroom after my wife went to sleep. And I could barely walk, and I felt the spirit, the evil spirit in the air. I'm not joking. That's why I'm sure they exist. But the next morning I woke up, had no idea I had breakfast. She said, come back Wednesday. I'm going to schedule you for Wednesday. I left, and I never went back. I reached rock bottom, and I don't know how. Must have been by the grace of God. I was on 2 different pills. I knew if I wasn't going to work, I was going to lose my job, and I was going to destroy my family. Somehow, I started waking up, do my work, and I was picked up by a mysterious force. I cannot explain it. But what saved me was restoring my faith. The Lord brought to mind miracles of faith and brought to mind the apparitions of the Blessed Mother. In Lourdes, in Guadalupe, in the 1500s in Mexico, thousands of witnesses. Juan Diego, you should learn the story. Lourdes in France, Saint Bernadette, when she went and dug for water, and the spring of water is still coming. And then Fatima, when the Blessed Mother appeared to 3 children. But it was Padre Pio who had been saving me all this time. There's a story of a soldier who was in the plane, and the plane was going down, and then they were saved, and he saw Padre Pio. There's so many stories about Padre Pio. One thing I recommend, you should read stories of the saints. That's what gives you hope. But there is one saint that close to that time also saved me, and I'll tell you a story in a minute. But before I tell you, if you know anyone experiencing depression, I'm willing to talk to them. I'm already helping few people, trying to help. I'm not a doctor again, but I can only help from a spiritual perspective. There is still a physical aspect, medical aspect, that I am not an expert on. But one thing I know is that the doctor told my family there is no way he will heal if he quits the medication. I quit the medication. I quit one of the pills. My family didn't want me to. They pressured me to stay on the medication because they were afraid I began to get better. They were afraid I would slip back. It's called a relapse. But I quit the medication. But I have to tell you one thing. I have to give you some time to ask some questions. It is still, feels like still something in my brain. But what happened is I was in the prison cell, and I was able to escape with the rosary, and I put the devil instead in the prison cell, and I locked him up. But if I go close, I know he can devour me. And it's still hanging over my head. The only way I can survive is through the mysteries of the rosary. All 20 mysteries. So now I thank God for the depression that I got, because finally, as I promised the Blessed Mother in 2012, it's a long story, but Father Simon and I went to a Catholic conference, and I had an episode of arrhythmia, and I was in the hospital. I drove to the hospital, and then I had to call him. They had to come pick me up. Somebody had to bring him to pick me up. I promised the Blessed Mother I would pray 4 rosaries a day if I was going to survive that incident. I never did. When the depression happened, now I reached a point where I am striving, I cannot say I'm there, to be constant meditation. Even when I'm talking to you now, right now, I am on the second sorrowful mystery, the crowning with thorns. It's in the back of my mind. The devil tries to attack me, so I go back to the mystery. There is 20 mysteries. The only way I can survive, because you remember, I left the prison cell, but I'm still injured, because when I was in the prison cell, I did not get treatment, so I am injured. The wounds are deep. I had tremors all over my body because of the pills caused tremor. I thought I had Parkinson's disease. I went to see a neurologist a few times. They did many tests. Thank God, it turned out I did not have Parkinson's disease. But those one of the side effects of the antidepressant pills is Parkinson's disease. So, how are we on time?
Yeah.
Questions?
Yeah, we can take a couple questions.
Okay.
If you guys have any questions,
Yeah.
you can ask, okay?
Yes, question.
I just want to say first, before I ask my question, thank you for taking the time to share this with us, because I
Thank
know how hard it can, be for people like you to share this story. But in your story, you told us that you had asked a priest prove to me the existence of God.
Yeah.
And then you also shared to us in your story that when you sold your house and you took all the religious pictures except the one of Padre Pio. Do you believe that that could have been God telling you that, I am here, I'm with you?
Yes, thank you. What's your name?
Matthew?
Matthew. So Matthew's question is the story with my house is that I took down all the pictures except the pictures of Padre Pio. The house didn't sell. For 9 months, we didn't even get one offer. And I thought I was going to lose it and lose everything. And I was able not only to stay in it, now we convinced my daughter and our grandchild to come back and move with us. So it's like God has blessed me so much, miracles started happening. I paid all my debtors. I didn't go into bankruptcy. And yes, it proved to me that Padre Pio had all to do with my healing and the miracle of my healing. Thank you for the question. By the way, you look like Padre Pio. Check out this picture.
My dad.
Yes, question, another question. Yes, Mark.
How often did during your times of trials, how often did the devil shame you and make fun of you?
The question is, how often during those 5 months did the devil shame me and make fun of me? Almost every day I thought I was worthless because of the mistakes I made. Almost every single day. And that's why, because I made the mistakes, I was not worthy to live anymore. Because I thought, I couldn't forgive myself. See, this is what happens. This is what the devil wants. Because we all make mistakes. We're all sinners. There is only one person who never committed sin. The Blessed Mother, Mary. Because she was conceived without original sin in her mother's womb. That's what the Immaculate Conception is not the virginal birth. So every day I was attacked and I was oppressed. See, evil spirits oppress us, try to oppress us or oppress us all day long. Sometimes because of generational sin. Sometimes the sin of parents and grandparents leads to oppression. So we need to be released from See, a lot of times, we are in prison and we are chained by the devil. When I was your age, I committed a lot of sins. I was chained. And I know you go through this too. But we must remember, and again, it's the rosary. is the way to defeat the devil is through prayer and fasting, but God gave us the rosary as a weapon. Jesus revealed the rosary through the Blessed Mother to Saint Dominic. And it was affirmed time and time and time again. John Paul the Great wrote a whole letter about the rosary. And when he announced the luminous mysteries in 2002. Who knows all the mysteries of the rosary, all 20, from the Annunciation all the way to the coronation of the Blessed Mother? Who can recite all 20 mysteries? Anybody in fam? So I can go home and tell my wife, fam knows the rosary. You should memorize the rosary mysteries too. Anybody knows all 20? What's your name? Okay, how about just the 5 joyful mysteries? What are they? What are the 5 joyful mysteries? Annunciation, which is the incarnation, right? When God became a baby. Visitation, when the Blessed Mother visited Elizabeth. Birth of Jesus in the manger. What's the 4th one? Wait, I know. Birth of Jesus, presentation in the temple when he was a baby. She took him to the temple, and then finding the temple. It's very easy. See, don't feel bad. Listen, don't feel bad. Until age 40, I did not know the rosary mysteries. But I remember my grandma used to pray with us every day. Old Chaldean lady, still alive, 95 years old, and she knew. She used to call it maqrobu. She says the Virgin in Chaldean, Razaqa Mayat Hasha, and she would say a prayer, and the sisters taught her that. So when Pope John Paul II, one day, I got an email at work, it was 2002, October, I think 22nd, 2002, luminous mysteries. What? Luminous? What's the other mysteries? So I went home like crazy and I memorized all of them. The best way to memorize, it's a sequence of the life of Jesus. Since he was conceived, the moment of God's incarnation, the joyful, 12 years, ends with 12 years, and then it jumps to the luminous, because between age 12 to 30, there is nothing in the Bible about Jesus. I'll get to you in a second. And then it starts the luminous with the baptism, first miracle, declaration, transfiguration, and then institution of the Last Supper. And then it goes to sorrowful, which is only 10 hours. Agony in the garden, scourging at the pillar, crowning with thorns, the way of the cross, crucifixion. And then it goes to glorious, resurrection, ascension, descent of the Holy Spirit, assumption of the Blessed Mother body and soul, and coronation. The reason I'm telling you, because this is my weapon now. This is my weapon. When the devil attacks me, now we have something going on with the seminarians. Even today, I sent a text to the seminarians, and I said, what mystery are you on? And then Danny, where's Danny? He sent me a text, took a picture of Father Simon. He said, do you know this guy? I said, yeah, I know this guy. Ask him what mystery he's on. So I told him, I was at the Transfiguration. What mystery are you on? So if I'm not at a certain mystery, so the way you meditate on the mysteries, Mark, to answer your question, how to beat oppression, Jesus said, I go to the manger. If I am at the third joyful mystery, like I'm there with Mary under the cross. And I'm helping her with the baby. I'm helping her change the baby. And when St. Joseph went to get some food for the Blessed Mother, I'm helping her too. Renee, what's your question? How do you deal, the question was, thank you, good question. How do you deal with the fear of falling back into depression? Thank you, very good question. I have this fear every second of the day. Not only that, but the fear of what could go wrong. Always fearing, if I hear a siren, oh my God, is it Father Simon that got in an accident? Oh, sorry. Sorry. Thank you, Father Simon. Yeah, thank you. Don't say God's name in vain. I said, oh my God, I shouldn't. So, as I mentioned, Renee, whenever you're tempted, because now I'm getting attacked all the time to remind me of my past mistakes and that I cannot do my job, I'm going to fail, I'm going to get fired, terrible things will start happening to get me back into depression. Where do I go back? what mystery am I on? I'm constantly praying. I go under the cross or walk with the cross. The young lady next to you, Mary, right? I remembered. Mary, what's your question? I can't hear you, Mary. Did you ever have anxiety or panic attacks is the question. Very good question. You guys are asking great questions. This is how it starts. Yes. The first few weeks, I couldn't sleep because of anxiety. But then it changed. The depression matured into severe clinical depression where I wanted just to be in bed all the time. When I just left now home, it was still light. I remember there was one day, it was a Sunday, and I went to sleep when it was still light. I couldn't believe it. Now when I think about it, when I think of all the things I went through those 5 months, I feel ashamed. Now that's what the devil is trying to shame me of. I lost my dignity. I became like an animal, honestly. I'm worthless, I deserve to die, I lost respect, stopped seeing my friends. It was terrible. Do we have time for some more questions?
No.
No? Okay. All right, thank you so much for listening. God bless you.